Well, good afternoon, John Donovan.
Hey,
Marty Keller here in Sacramento, and we're happy to welcome our British correspondent, Ron Kastner.
From Long
I was
Island.
I was gonna say European, but with Brexit, I'm not sure you're the European correspondent. So
No.
um, so Ron's in the States for the time being, so it's easier for him to connect with us, and so we're grateful for you taking some time out of your day, the beginning of your weekend, to join us.
Thank you.
Always appreciate the
My
opportunity to check in with you. People watching this may not know that Ron and I have been friends for a long, long time, way back into the mystic hordes of history sometime, and longer than I've known John even. So
yeah,
Ron and I have shared many a life experience, and we are sharing this particular part of our lives a lot more frequently, and so that's why we're always happy to welcome Ron. Ron's been writing a book about being older healthy.
Yep.
And so a lot of the experiences that he shares with us are things that he's chronicling in his book. Not all of them, but
Yep.
That's
And
really cool.
And relaunching a website.
Yeah.
So
we last had the chance to share with you in January, and so I thought maybe I'd ask what have you learned about yourself in the last 4 or 5 months?
I have I probably mentioned it before, and you two know it for sure. But my father died when I was 7. I'm an only child, and I have been going through the weirdest, and they're not weird, they're wonderful, but they are the more ups and downs than I've ever done in my life. And they have been times of incredible joy and times of, okay, more is processing. It's still coming. And those times are not fun, but, as we know in this work, you go through them. And it's always, always, always a revelatory experience. It always, with me anyway, it always heals. And it's, the times I don't feel good end when there is some new insight and new emotional breakthrough that I haven't experienced before. And the latest one has been, as I've been intensifying my memory of that period is in my emotional memory of that period doesn't exist or didn't exist for most of my life. And who knows what I've been carrying around inside. It's starting to come out now. And it is the incredible joy that I remember of having my father around. He was my protector. My mother was less joyful to be with. She was stricter, and she was, and she became that in spades after he died, and when she was all I had. And
you were how old? You were how old when he died?
7.
7. Okay.
And I was expected to be the big boy, in John's words, not feel anything, not feel sorrow, not feel hurt, not feel anger. I was expected to be the big, brave boy who supported my mother, basically.
yeah,
And I was sent away for a few months during the time that my father was dying. I was not around for his dying. I went to my cousin's house, and I was not at the funeral, so I never got any closure. And And that is now after 65 years. That stuff is bubbling up, and I'm starting to feel that stuff in a way that I never have. So it is a testament to the fact, A, that this stuff never dies. It never goes away. And it is also a testament that this time of life is a perfect time to begin dealing with this if I haven't already.
Yeah.
So it's wonderful, and it's hard, you know. It's wonderful and it's hard. It's funny that Marty and I talked over the weekend, and I described to him this incredible joy of, Dad, you're back. I got you again. You're here. You're with me. You're, whatever. All that stuff, I kind of knew how happy I used to be when he was around. And, but I hadn't experienced it viscerally, so I did. And then I said to Marty, I think there's going to be more to come on this.
Yeah.
And sure enough, a few days later, that turned into anger against him, which I've never felt before.
Right.
You know? Anger against him, like, why did you do this to me? You left me with Mom. You weren't around to protect me. You didn't say goodbye. Really, and so it's been a real roller coaster. Anyway, all good stuff. At the same time, I'm relaunching this website, which is now going to be called ronkastner.com, and not some big bells and whistles that I was doing before. And I'm on the verge of hybrid publishing the book that I wrote called A Life Yet to Live. So there's a lot going on, not to mention the fact that, I'm still supporting my young daughters, and, there's all that stuff going on at the same time. So that's my update.
Cool.
Yeah.
There's a lot to unpack there. I just,
Yeah, you think?
well, I can't help but reflect that as you're going through this experience, as John knows and and maybe some of the folks who watch this podcast know, I was back in Michigan a week and a half ago to eulogize my parents at a memorial service that we finally got to hold for them. They had both passed during the pandemic, and so there wasn't an opportunity to have that closure that you were talking about with your dad.
Right.
And so we finally did that, and we had about 75 people came to the church, and I was the co-eulogizer with my next youngest brother, and it's now been about 10 days since then, and I've had a lot to reflect on. And mostly what I've been reflecting on is what I noticed my parents passed on to their children.
Right.
And in particular, as I'm the oldest of 6, as opposed to you, who's an only child, so it's a completely different experience.
Mm-hmm.
I found my heart absolutely ripped open in gratitude for my siblings and their just the presence for each of them in my life. They're all different people, but we all have things in common. We all came through the same dysfunctions in our family of origin, but the one who's the youngest, who's 11 years younger than me, he had a very different experience in that family of origin than I did. And so we often get the opportunity to compare notes about our experiences. But the closure, I got to tell you, Ron, the capacity to finally have this closure, I had no idea going into it that it would have that kind of meaning. and generating within me a sense of joy, a sense of love and connection. When I was 7, my brother Larry came home from the hospital after he was born, and when he was 3 months old, he died of crib death. And just like you, I wasn't allowed to go to the funeral, and I remember feeling outraged, and in particular because it wasn't safe to express rage, so I just shoved it in
and left out.
Yeah,
and was mistreated.
exactly.
Yep.
I don't presume to say it rises to the level of losing my dad, but certainly that sense of being left out, abandoned. Part of it for me was I'm not trusted. They don't trust me to come to church and behave.
Yeah.
So all of those things swirled around. So when you were sharing that about your experience with your dad, I was I'm in total resonance from my own life experience, and I really want to acknowledge the insight that you shared about finding this time of our lives to be a great opportunity to process all this stuff.
Yeah.
To have lived long enough to have an emotionally stable platform upon which to take a look at all these things, to have created a network of support and love.
Mm-hmm.
So people stand by us as we go through these difficult, challenging emotional appearances.
Yep.
So I just wanted to maybe as an initial opening reflection on what you said, to share a little bit about my own experience in tandem with yours.
Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I've seen you with your brothers, and I know, 2 of them anyway. And I it's tangible, the connection between you and the love between you, despite you all 3 being completely different.
Yeah.
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 And living thousands of miles away from each other.
Yeah. But very close. Very close.
And I attribute that in part to my parents. I can't explain that, but I think they, in spite of their dysfunctions and their alcoholism and their own emotional fears of abandonment, which were tangible and palpable as I look back on it, I think they also had some bedrock commitment to family that we inherited.
Yeah.
I can't explain it, and it's actually just a new thought that popped into my mind as we're talking.
Yeah.
But one of the things I learned from you, John, is that if I want to know what's going on inside of me, I just look at what I have outside of me. And so I noticed that outside of us as a group of siblings, the 6 of us, there's this sense of connection and solidarity and loyalty.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, where do we get that?
Yeah.
I mean, somehow I believe those are qualities that our parents transmitted to us, in spite of all of the difficulties.
And you guys, all of you relied on each other for support. To the extent you were getting shit from your parents, you went to the person next door. Did you get this too? Did they single me? I got the same thing. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, but not while it was happening.
Yeah.
We're part of the, it's kind of funny that I'm
wish
hearing
I
you
had
say,
brothers. I wish I
Yeah.
had brothers and sisters.
yeah, I hear you.
Yeah.
Part of what's happened is as we grew up and moved away, and we have a reunion every other year where we get together for a week, and just slowly but surely over the years, we've been doing that since 1991, so that's 30 years. We started opening up to each other about our experiences.
Right.
I remember one time, this is maybe 20 years ago, sitting at one of our reunions with one of my brothers, and he was was very upset about something, I could tell. And it turned out that he was really, he was feeling sad because he didn't feel at all close to our mother. And so when he spoke that to me, he mustered up the courage to say that. I felt this sense of joy and liberation because I thought I was the only one. And so when I was able to say to him, I feel the same way too, brother, that created a bond.
That's just the way she was. She probably was like that with most of you.
Well, as it turns out, yeah. But we didn't talk about it because part of the structure of family dysfunction is you don't talk about reality.
I know.
You maintain family secrets, even these kinds of things, and it felt shameful. It still, I'll be honest, it still sometimes feels shameful for me to say that I didn't have this utterly wonderful, loving relationship with my mother. It's like there's that voice in my head says, well, you're supposed to, and if you don't, there's something wrong with you.
Yeah.
And so, I just give those voices permission to say their thing. And
John's got to have something to say about that.
Yeah.
Have we got into moms now? It's like, yeah, I actually did my mother's eulogy, and as a couple days before the funeral, I was sitting down trying to write, and I'm thinking I cannot say anything I'm thinking right now, and I didn't know what to do because her and I just did not get along.
Right.
So what I did was call people I knew in the family, extended family, and I asked them what one word describes your experience with mom. Her name's Lorraine. I said, with Lorraine, and tell me a story about it. And so they gave me a word like nurturing. And then they told me a story that they had about her when she was nurturing. And I got about 12 of these all lined up, and I wrote them all down. And I got up there and I fed them back to them. I think one of the things I did contribute is that I knew my mother couldn't sew. And so I said, my mother couldn't sew worth a darn. And I got to laugh because everybody knew she couldn't sew. She would try to sew something and be all crooked. Everybody knew that. Yeah, I was the son that hung around her the most, and I was the one that got the most guff. I want to say guff. I don't know, abuse from her, withholding, criticism, and yet that was my role. So,
right. You were second in the birth order.
I was second in the birth order.
Out of how many?
4.
Yeah.
Two younger than me. So.
Right.
It's interesting that my brother, who's second in the birth order, has always been chided by the rest of us as being mom's favorite.
Interesting.
Yeah. I didn't get that privilege. The youngest one was her favorite.
But in your specific case, Marty, it could have been because of having lost the second child.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's true. That was just
and the preciousness of the next one that came.
Yeah, along. Yeah. No, I it's hard to imagine how it could be otherwise.
Yeah.
Because I cannot put myself into the experience of a young woman. So my mom was 23 when my brother died. I was like 23. How do you, I can't do it. I just I have no clue what her experience was.
Right.
And what saddened me in the course of our relationship is that these were things that she steadfastly wouldn't talk about. And I could detect, as I came into this work, I could detect the depth of the sadness and fear by the determination not to talk about it.
Right.
And so all I could do was give her permission to be who she was, and to give myself permission to be how I was about it.
Mm-hmm.
And once I learned to do that, we got along fine. It's like, once I learned that, you know, this is a situation is the way it is, and I had no power to change it. It's like I give myself permission to be powerless. And you know, John, the way I handled the conundrum of how to eulogize my mom was, I decided to talk about the things about her that I admired, and there was plenty to admire.
Good.
Although, just like you with the sewing story, as we're driving to the church, this idea hit me. It's like, oh gosh, yes, this is how I'm going to end it up. So my mom was a freaking brilliant cribbage player, and she always beat me.
Right.
And one of the things that was hilarious is that she was pretty damn ruthless about it. I mean, she would not only beat me, but then she would laugh at me. Ah, you couldn't beat me again, huh? And it's like, and she was serious. In fact, when we were sitting around talking later, several of the grandkids spoke up about how grandma was ruthless in cribbage, beating them too. So it's like, yeah, that was my last experience with mom, was I beat her at cribbage. So I knew she was on the downhill slide.
So John, I'm just going to shift the subject a little bit for me. Marty and I were talking over last weekend, and I had this conversation with a psychologist friend of mine, and we were talking about, what percentage do you think of actual daily experience is projection from the inside, or is affected by projection from the inside?
100%.
We both thought, like, yeah, it's got to be like 80, 90.
No, it's like, you cannot know what you don't know. It's like you can't look at something and call it something you don't have the experience of.
And the reason I asked the question is that going through all this stuff that I'm going through now, I just find that my entire day, all my experiences are shaped by what I know is turmoil inside.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And the emotions that I feel in different situations are the emotions I'm feeling inside, not necessarily appropriate. It's exactly what you say about the toaster.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
they're not appropriate to well, they're not inappropriate. Sometimes
Right.
sometimes they're not.
Yeah.
But they're it's my stuff, you know. And yeah, no, the psychologist friend said it's got to be at least 50, probably a lot more. And I said, no, I think it's higher than that.
Yeah, yeah.
Higher than that.
100%. So this process of accountability, owning your projections, and I want to say right off, if you see kindness in somebody, that's a projection. That's your interpretation of what that person's doing. If you see rudeness or arrogance, again, that's your interpretation. You don't know the other person's motivations or what's going on inside them. All you see is, and what you see in your rational mind, cognitive mind, the only thing it can do is compare it to the past.
Right.
Okay, so it's deductive. Now, having done a lot of accountability work like you have and Marty, there's moments of clarity. And in those moments, you're not actually thinking, you're just being.
Right.
And you're not projecting, you're simply where you're at, observing and responding appropriately. And for me, and you get to determine for each one of you how many moments there are for you. For me, there's When I'm facilitating right now in this moment, a lot of times in my life, especially when I'm with people, I'm in this non-thinking place. So if I had an opinion, it would then be a projection. So it's like I'm simply there observing and participating.
Right.
And that capacity to be there without a projection allows me to, well, to see the other person and be with the other person. It's where the compassion, empathy, concern, love.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I've been very impressed with that in the Digging in the Dirt group.
yeah.
With you. That you're not, you know, there's some people in that group who are in need of what you give, and and you're just not afraid of it. You're not afraid of it. It's a you know, this place down deep inside me, I am sometimes really afraid of.
Yes.
You know, just don't know. I just don't know. Sometimes I'm not, you know. I mean, I also think there's a guiding light in there that is guiding me through that darkness, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and as I get stronger, it says, okay, you can now see some more dark.
Right. Oh my God. Yeah.
You're allowed.
Yeah. You're allowed to go a little deeper.
You've gotten some, you know, it's kind of like Dante, you know, climbing up the mountain of purgatory, you know.
Yeah.
You've passed this hurdle. Let's go for the next one. There's more, but there's more coming.
There's more coming.
So I'm just to say I'm very impressed with that when I watch you work. You know.
Well, I'd like to testify on this question. So what I think that I've learned a lot from you, John, but I think the single most salient, decisive thing that I learned from you was no blame, no judgment.
Yeah.
Because the only way I could initially begin to face my projections was to be able to have a willingness to just state it as a blunt fact, because otherwise I would use it to blame and shame myself.
Correct.
So, you know, for example, we've talked about on this podcast, I'm a liar. I've shared about I like being in debt. And there are any number of judgments that we have about ourselves that we find too painful to bear, so we have to project them outside of us, try to pass them on. So I'll never forget sitting in your place in West Sacramento in the men's group days. And the first time, I don't even remember what it was that I was projecting, and you are working with me. Are you willing to consider that maybe, you know, you're a liar or whatever it was? Yeah. And I remember I had this enlightened voice saying, just try it without being wrong. Just try it. Just say it without, see if you can say it. You can do this without blaming yourself. It's just a statement.
Right. Yeah.
And that moment changed my life, because I was actually able to bear it. And so that led me on a journey of, you know, what else that I project out there can I learn to bear? What else about myself that I project out there can I learn to bear? And so over time, the practice has become, and I'm not saying 100% every time automatically, but way more than I used to. When I find myself judging somebody, criticizing somebody with some kind of emotional kick, my question is, okay, what is it about myself that I don't want to look at?
Right.
What is really going on? And then that leads me to, inevitably, to the second part of the practice, which is once I identify what's going on with me and I'm able to feel the impact of that truth, then I get to say what I want. So, okay, what do I want?
Right.
And one of the things that I've learned to do in this practice is not to anticipate the answer to that question, but to do my best to just stay present and see what answer presents itself. And then once I get the answer, I want to be calm. I want to feel safe in my own skin, whatever it is, then I can set that intention and move on to the next thing.
Right. Yeah. I was thinking about the accountability tree process, and one of the things I'm getting from listening to people I believe know more than I do is that this whole cosmos thing, Earth, human being, is about us finding and exercising freedom of choice. It's like if I were an angel and I was close to God, there'd be no choice. I would just absolutely be in bliss, and I wouldn't know that there could be another choice. Or so this human experiment.
Unless you're Lucifer.
Well, actually, I believe he was the one that was. Yeah. Okay. Yes. It's like, oh, that guy. Yeah.
You don't really want to get into this.
Yeah.
No, I actually think it's important, but go ahead.
Yeah. So do I. And I do have a thought on that, but so we forget and we struggle, and this is over a long period of time as a race consciousness, human consciousness. And then of course I believe in reincarnation, so I've been back there doing that. I'm here doing this, and I'm going to be someplace in the future doing that. And it's a process of making a conscious choice, knowing both sides, and then choosing, say, love or expansion. My definition of love is consistent expansion, and then choosing consistent expansion. Things like in service to others. So that accountability tree, in my experience, creates a spaciousness inside of me that's not confining or constricting. It's spacious, and it's the feeling of freedom of choice, freedom to move. All options open. There's no option not open. And that's what makes the choice to be in love, compassion, kindness significant. So, yeah, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
Part of the mystery for me is that how there has consistently been throughout the history of our species, about 300,000 years maybe, that there's always been a group of us that feel pulled to the future,
Right?
That feel pulled to investigate this stuff. I mean, most of us don't seem to be pulled to do that, but there is a consistent group that have produced some amazing insights, going back into, the time of the Hindus, the original Hindu scripts, the Vedas, a couple thousand, 3,000, 4,000 years ago, the Buddha 2,400 years ago, Zoroaster, Lao Tzu, some of the Egyptians. I mean, the Minoans, the Greeks, then of course Jesus. I mean, it's just amazing that there's always been a part of humanity that is looking under what appear to be the difficulties of life and looking for something that is remarkably consistent with what you just said, John.
Yeah. And what just came to me is creating the space for development.
Well, it's the freedom thing you were talking about.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, the way I feel it when I have, you know, the times of clarity, and my definition of clarity is much the same as yours, John. It's just like that sense of freedom and space and whatever. Is that evolution has been working on, and in my view of the world, evolution, the process of evolution is God. I mean, that's, you know, it's that never-ending cycle of, oh, well, this is working pretty well. What can we do to make it better?
Right.
You know,
Mhm.
and it's, you know, it just keeps on happening. It's very much Robert Godwin's, you know, the one cosmos under God view of things. And evolution has been working for 13.5 billion years to make me, you know.
Mhm.
So for me, you know, and that doesn't make me more special than any of the other 7 billion people on the
Right,
face
right.
of the earth. But evolution has been working to make me the unique organism that I am, in order for me to be as completely me as I can be.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And to the extent that I experienced stuff in my early life that caused me not to be as completely me as I could be.
Right.
That's the subject of this work.
Yeah.
You know, to me. So, and I unlike a lot of people, I mean, I take this to physical stuff as well. It's not just, you know, inner emotional stuff. And you know, my physical health and all that other stuff matters a ton to me. And I do, you know, and I do lots of other, you know, I practice that in lots of other ways, whether it be yoga or movement or diet or all kinds of other stuff. But the full expression of who I am is all of that stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like I said, in my times of more clarity, that connection is palpable and emotional, and I feel connected to everything, and it's wonderful. And those times get me through the other times. So, you know.
Well, I'd just like to offer, Ron, that everything that you said is so, and you've also chosen, whether it's conscious or not, to be a transmitter of what it is that you know.
Yeah.
So that you're not the end product of the evolution. You're an element of the evolution that's going to grow past us.
Absolutely.
But in part be shaped by what we're doing. I mean, everything contributes.
Yeah.
Just like you said, everything in evolution, the 13.6 billion years has contributed to us. Now we are going to be we're adding our piece to that ongoing flow of evolutionary development.
And it's a giant mosaic, and you never know which piece is going to be, you know, more important than the other, but, you know, it just is, you know. Everybody puts their piece in. So,
yeah. It's one of the things that the more I do facilitating of accountability practice groups, the more I am inclined to support people seeing their magnificence. A lot of the work starts with looking back. And it's like John said, we can only know what's already happened. And when we then acknowledge what's happened and then we say what we want and we create an intention, we're actually beginning to create a future consciously and intentionally.
Yes.
That changes all that stuff that happened in the past.
Yep.
Yeah.
or as you said, John, it goes into that subconscious pool of information and adds to it, so that what's there is no longer what it was an hour ago.
Yeah.
Correct.
And then that's part of this is the way I understand it. It's part of this drive for all of us to become who we have the capability of being.
Yeah.
One of the things, John, that you've started saying in the Digging in the Dirt group is that where you end up will be not where you expect to, and will be, and I'm using this word in a general sense, but better than you ever expected it to be.
Correct. Yeah.
Or could expect it to be.
Could. Yeah.
You could expect it to be.
Yeah.
And that, to me, I have felt that. I felt it when you said it. I have felt it in myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that, to me, is it's like there's part of me that's out in front of me, pulling me along. You know?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
come on, you gotta get here.
Yeah. Yeah.
You gotta get here. You gotta, this is, it's, I know it's hard, but you can do it, you know?
Right.
And it's a real lifeline. It's a real lifeline. But there's a joy and a sense of connectedness and integrity that comes with this inside
Mm-hmm.
that I have never experienced before, you know, just
Wow.
never experienced before.
Mm-hmm.
When it's on that level.
Yep.
So
When I started writing my book 3 years ago, it's called Creating Our World. And I started out, it's like first chapter is where do we find ourselves now? And it's a look at the evolutionary trajectory. And when I outlined the book, the last chapter was going to be, and where are we going? And so I'm writing this book as I'm doing very intense accountability work, so that by the time I got to the 9th and 10th chapters, the last 2 chapters, the last chapter became, instead of where are we going, it became where do we want to go? And in that was an entire radical shift of my understanding that different from what I started the book out with.
yeah.
Yeah.
What do we want?
Yep.
That's the first question I ask new people who come into my groups. What do you want that you don't have? And that's the question I will continue to ask myself.
Yeah.
What do I want that I don't have? And that focus, that orientation towards something, and creates an opening. The other day I found myself saying, creates an opening for that to come to me. It's like we think the obstacle is blocking us from going that way. And what's happening is the obstacle's keeping us from seeing what's out there, what we could see, what could come to us, and taking out the filters of hate and resentment and bitterness, which are in alignment with what happened to me as a child, allows me to glean more different.
Well, I know for me, that is the antithesis of what I was taught as a child. That
Yes.
my wanting is a burden,
Right.
to somebody else. Whether it's wanting something to buy,
Mm-hmm.
or wanting a career or an interest, or having an interest that was not in line with, you know, what in my case, it was mainly my mother, what my mother wanted for me. And to teach a child at any age that their want, their genuine, visceral want is valuable to themselves and the world is such a gift. It's such a gift. It's not, you know, because most children don't hear that. You know, they don't hear, Mommy, I want, or Daddy, I want. They don't hear, oh, that's wonderful. You want that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
It's wonderful. Let's see how we can do it. Let's see if we get it for you. You know?
Yeah. I was talking to one of his teachers, and he's going into the first grade. He's going to turn 7 years old. And I was asking him, you know, what the stage of development he's in and what my part is in that. And she said he's going to start putting together his fantasies. So like he'll come to school and want to build a castle. So Grandpa is going to get the materials. That's your job, John, is get the materials so that he can build his castle and help him build and show him what building is, and so he can put in physical form that thing that he enjoys doing.
Lucky kid. Lucky kid. Lucky kid.
You know, I'm a speaker at my Unity Church, and one of the things that's given me an opportunity to do is to really dig into some of the foundational writings of the people that started this New Thought movement. And I came across this piece by one of the principal writers, a medical doctor named Emily Cady, who wrote, it was called the Theology of Desire. And she says that desire is the way God expresses in us the future that is possible.
Yep.
And exactly. she went on this whole polemic about almost exactly what you guys were saying. It's like the crushing of people's desires is the crushing of the expression of God within us.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, I don't see that a lot in theological writings. That was quite an amazing insight.
And even if you define some people's desires as shallow and whatever, let them go through it. Find that out for themselves.
Exactly.
You know, those wants, letting them do that, and letting them, encouraging them to do that is fine, you know.
I don't know your experience, John, in leading groups is, but what I find is oftentimes asking people what they want is baffling. It can baffle people because many of us have this inbred censor that says I can't want what I really want.
Exactly.
And so we find ourselves tongue-tied.
Yep.
I just remember what my mother used to say to me, and I'd say I want something or I wish for something, and she goes, wish in one hand, and I'll use the word defecate in the other, and see which one you get first. It's like
your mom said that?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't thought about that in a long time. So yeah, crushing that desire.
Whoa.
So I got one similar to that. My mother used to, if I came home from school and I was proud about something, she would start saying, "Oh, you're such a big shot." Well, you're not a big shot. You're a big shit.
Oh, there you go. See?
That's nice. Thanks, Mom.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Thanks, Mom. Yeah.
Yeah, and the irony is that these people were passing on what they were told as little girls.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, my parents were Depression era children. people. So, yeah,
Yeah.
it's reasonable. I mean, it's in alignment, not reasonable.
It's what you do.
It's lawful.
You know, it's how nature programs us.
Yeah.
You pass on what you think is going to get your kids to survive.
Right.
And that's what got them to survive.
Yeah.
So they pass it on. So they pass
Well,
it
and
on.
it's like we said at the top of the conversation, we can only know what our own past yields. So if that's what their past showed them,
Yeah.
they
Right.
can't know another. They could not know another way unless they were graced to go investigate something else.
Yeah.
Right.
Like we've been graced to do that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'd be just like them.
Yep.
A friend of mine is writing a book on parenting. Tentatively, she's a child psychologist, so she's well qualified. And she wrote another book called Birth Order Blues, which is all about the different stages of birth order and what parents can expect and how parents can nurture kids through that. But this one tentatively is called, I think, something like Fixing the World One Child at a Time. And we've had these discussions about if there was one generation of parents who were aware and didn't treat their kids the way they were treated, the world would be a completely different place.
In a short order.
In a short order.
Yeah.
In a short order.
Well, consider the possibility that the work that we're doing is smoothing the way for that eventuality.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. That's my vision, is to create a world where our children are nurtured to their authenticity.
Yep.
Yeah.
John, I gotta tell you, I was just thinking about the possibility of offering this work to teenagers.
Oh my God.
And so you're gonna laugh. So what showed up in my mind is, we'll call that account-a-teens.
In my experience, I've got a 15-year-old and an 18-year-old. I don't think the 15-year-old would be going for it, but the 18-year-old would. She's wise enough now to sort of have her own, emotional center, and I think the age difference would matter. I think that they need to be a little bit older. It depends on the child, obviously.
Yeah.
Well, and I wonder whether one could adjust the language to the learning level, the emotional learning level.
Yeah,
it's a good problem to have. Let's have that problem.
Yeah. Yep. Cool.
Well, we've got just a few minutes left before the midnight witching hour. Any last minute thoughts, gentlemen?
I just want to say I'm grateful for both of you, and the effect you both had on my life, and it just never stops. So thank you.
You're welcome, Ron.
Yeah.
This is father mother issues. It's like there's a lot. We could probably do another couple of these groups on just the father one, mother one. Um, and my willingness to be accountable has enabled me to come to a place of gratitude and love for each one of my parents, not negating any of their behaviors or actions, but they did the best they could with what they had.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, the good news is that I think Ron's going to be in the States for a few months, so easier to get him back on than
Yeah,
when
sort
he's
of
in
back-
London.
A little bit of back and forth between now and June, but yeah, from mid-June on, I'm back here, so I will be available.
I thought it might be fun also to get Dan on and have a four-way conversation about some of these things.
Fine.
Oh, that'd be something. Yeah.
I've never met Dan unless I met him at your birthday.
Yeah, he was there at the party.
I
But,
don't think I spoke to him.
Yeah, that's okay. All of us have really unique, if compatible perspectives, and that occurred to me earlier today. John's like, let's have Ron and Dan on at the same time.
Cool. Yeah. I'm
See if we
open to
could combine that to an hour.
that. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you as always, Ron, for
My
being
pleasure.
our British correspondent and being part of our lives and bringing your wisdom. And I just want to acknowledge what's always inspiring to me about you is your capacity to really stick with and articulate what's going on inside you. It's just pretty awesome. And I'm grateful for that.
Good, thanks. I'm
John, what can I say? John, the master, the guru, the pandit.
Oh, thank
The
you.
golfer.
I'll receive that.
The golfer.
The golfer. Yeah.
Always need something to bring you back down to earth, John.
Right. Yeah, everybody should have an outlet, some kind of something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, gentlemen. We'll
All right.
see you the next time.
Take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Marty.